Hey friends, my name is Doug. Welcome to Third Stall Garage. Today's project is the oil filter housing with the cooler built in, the oil cooler filter housing. This is my 2012 Volkswagen Passat TDI. Pretty sure it's the same. The 12 is the same as the 13 and the 14 of the TDIs, but the oil filter cooler housing is a known weak spot with the stock one, and so I'm replacing it with an all solid aluminum one today, as well as changing out the coolant, doing an oil change. I did a video similar to this when I was doing my 2013 car, and that video has actually had a lot of views and a lot of good comments on it. Since then, I've learned two things that I want to adjust in this video. One of them is I reused the bolts last time. You're not supposed to do that. They're a stretch. You torque them to, I think 14 foot-pounds or 11 foot-pounds and then 90 degrees. The second one is even more critical in my mind, is while you're doing this project, replace the idler, the Serpantine idler tensioner. Because while you have the intercooler and the oil filter housing out, that is the easiest time to get at the bolt, because the serpentine belt tensioner mounts from the middle of the engine, and the bolt comes through out to tighten it, as opposed to being bolted from the outside in. Do not know why Volkswagen did that. Probably easier for assembly, but I'm not a big fan of that. So this project, I am not a professional mechanic. I've done this twice now, but it's been a few years in between. It took me about 5 or 6 hours to do this full project, start to finish. That includes about 1 hour that I spent working on one of the bolts to get the housing out. That was just stubborn. Fairly doable. A lot of hard work, a lot of hoses. But with most common tools, should be doable by most people. I ended up buying the all aluminum oil cooler filter housing from Rock Auto. It was more expensive than, got good, it was like one of their favorites. So it got good reviews that way. It was more expensive than just the cheap solid aluminum ones off Amazon that are bottom dollar. Those made me nervous because this is such a big job. Often ID Parts will source them, and they're high quality ones, but they are out and don't know when they will be getting them back. I think those are all my thoughts off the top. Let's dive into this and do it, and see you at the end. All right, while the oil is draining, we're gonna take off this air intake. Start piling parts up. This air box needs to come out. There are two T20 screws holding that into kind of the radiator frame area. There's one. There are two of these T20 torque spits. And the box comes out. I'll lose the screws. Now the elbow should come out. I can push on it a little better. This elbow's got to come out. There's a little locking tab right here and one right here that if you can find a way to push on, that helps. Okay, the oil filter housing. If you look down here, that's where the oil filter goes. And then this is the cooler for the oil, and there's coolant and oil that flows through that. And You know, how do you know if it's leaking? You can look at it this way and go, everything's kind of, it's an old car, everything's kind of seeping with oil. I have found the best way is to look underneath. All right, let's try this way. So if we look under the radiator at the intercooler, we can see the bottom. Okay, so that area right there that is illuminated by the light is the joint between the oil filter cooler housing. So kind of the part covered by the flashlight there is the oil filter cooler. That part that the flashlight's now pointing at or covering is the block. So when running, I could see some coolant seeping through there. The other telltale signs are that as oil, Volkswagen coolant dries, it leaves a pink residue. So when I look at the bottom here of my engine oil pan, I've got not only drips of coolant, but I've got little white residue marks kind of all over. And so that's a telltale sign that it's been leaking coolant. Often this is hard to see because it generally leaks when you're driving and the wind just blows it all back. All right, let's start. I drain the oil, so time to put the plug back in, and then I will drain the coolant by opening up this hose right here on the bottom of the radiator. So there's the hose disconnected to drain the coolant. You can pop the quick disconnect fitting out of this end. I have found that they get stuck and it's much easier to do the rubber hose. Then while you're under here, disconnect the plug for the cooling fans. There is a red tab right there you need to pop up, and then you press on the black tab right below it. Right there. And it pops off. And then I think they're T25 screws, and the radiator fans will come out. Okay, so the 4 screws on the fan, I was wrong, are not T25s, they are T30s. The passenger lower one, the AC line is in the way, and I found it works best to use a long extension on a small socket. Then you can kind of flex the AC line out of the way to get that out. And now the fans come out. I think I'll just have to go out the bottom. That's even easier. All right, we're gonna pull those out. To get the intercooler out, it's not too bad. Okay, we're under the car. To get the intercooler out, there are 2 T30 screws to get out. One of them is right there. Does that look nice and clean? The other one is right there. You also will need to disconnect either this hose and that hose from the intercooler, or I just disconnected this from that coolant pump. And then the bottom is free. So now let's go up top and take a look there. There is an electrical connection there that gets disconnected. You do not need to disconnect that one. I did if you want. This hose needs to get disconnected. I chose to pop it off right there, bottom of that T. And then there is a very hidden 10mm bolt that is below and behind this black plastic cover. And my ratchet is on it right now so that you can kind of see where it is. And so I will undo that 10mm, and then the intercooler should come out. Well, progress, the intercooler is out. Couple things I missed when I originally described to you. Couple additional things that need to come out. There's a hose that attaches to this. This guy comes off of the radiator. It's one of those spring clip ones. I sprayed a little WD-40 in the slot and then was able to get a screwdriver behind here against the radiator and just wiggle back and forth for about 10 minutes, and that guy popped off. And then the great big air intake on the bottom needs to come off as well. So you've got a mounting bolt there, mounting bolt there. And then there is that little 10 millimeter that's hiding behind the back. So those are the 3 main bolts, and then a lot of hoses to attach. And now I've got a lot more space down here. Look at that. Okay, the oil filter housing comes out next. We've got 2 holes on the bottom, hole in the upper left, hole in the upper right. There also is your oil check dipstick is right here, and there is a 10 mil bolt that holds that on. There may also be a plastic clip part way down. I think that needs to get pushed out of the way. The bolts that hold your oil filter houser down, look, they are a triple square. So that is kind of a 12-point tool. It's 3 squares rotated a third, which gives you your triple square. Looks like this. Kind of looks a little bit like a Torx, but it is not. Make sure you get the right one. So you'll need a small triple square to get that in. I'm gonna work on those 2 lower triple squares from the bottom and the top, and I'll show you how that goes. So I have the bottom 2 bolts out of the oil filter cooler housing, and they are the triple square that I described. What was particularly interesting to me is this one, more than the other one, has a very shallow head. So my triple square barely engaged a 1/16 of an inch. Which made me very nervous it was going to strip out. Now neither of them did. I also grabbed a pick and I went in and cleaned. No, take that back. Maybe it's just packed full. I think that's it. Take back. Clean these heads out with a pick or a dental pick or something so you get as much engagement as you can. And blow it out with an air gun or something. I mean, these aren't awful, but these are not easy bolts to find in the gooey, oily mess. But they're doable, so keep trying. All right, my old one is out. There is a hose on the right-hand side of it that needs to come off. It's the last thing I took off. You could kind of twist this thing around and get at the hose clamp. So I'll do my best to remember to put that on first. When you take this thing off, be ready for some more coolant to come out, so you might not have your face underneath it. And then if you look at mine here, you can see spots where this lip has failed. And I think there's one other spot on it, but that's the main point where I think the seal had failed, and that's where it was leaking from. So time to go in and get the block as clean as I can on the mating surface and get ready to start putting the new one in. Just so you know, I'm probably about 4 hours into this project so far, and 1 hour of it went to getting one of these bolts out because the triple square would not seat all the way in it, despite how often I cleaned it with a pick and everything. I don't know why. It's almost like somebody had stripped it out before. I ended up putting my triple square socket on it, holding it in place with an extension, and using my air chisel to hammer it in. And only then, you know, even tapping it with a hammer didn't do it. I could see it slowly work its way into the bolt, and then it came out. So this is why this is not my favorite job, but I think I'm about halfway there. And boy, that looks a whole lot nicer than this, huh? Time to put the new filter housing in. I retorqued these. They're supposed to be, I think, 12 foot-pounds or 11 foot-pounds. They were just slightly torqued less than that from the factory, so it felt good just to double check those. I also double checked, and you should too, that there is an oil filter in there. Don't just install this without checking that, because you want to make sure that there's a filter in. Now's the time to put it in if you haven't. And then you take this cover plate off the back, and you can see all the nice new, sorry, my hand's in the way. The guy really sticks on there. You can see the new rubber gasket the whole way down, and then there is the cleaned up mounting surface. Wiped it with a rag carefully, then scrubbed it with a Scotch-Brite and a little brake clean, and it is now ready to get put in. So that is next. All right, so I started the process of putting the new oil filter housing cooler in there. And then remember, you got to do the belt tensioner. Now's your time to do that. It's okay to have that in, but I'm so thankful I remembered before the intercooler went back in, because that really blocks your way. So to get the Serpantine belt tensioner off, which is that guy right down there that the light is shining on, that bolt that you see that my light's pointing at, that just takes the pulley off. That does not remove the tensioner. Not the best design in the world in my mind by Volkswagen. The bolt actually comes in from the back. So basically, to get the Serpantine belt off, you want to put a 16mm socket on the end of that tensioning nut bolt. Let me show you. You do that from down below. It's right up here. Put your 16mm on there. Wrench, you could use a socket too. Wrench works fine. And then you're gonna use a long wrench as an extension, or put extension on a socket. And then you swing that puppy out of the way. The belt goes loose. You can pull the belt off the pulley, let it swing back, take your wrench off. Now we're gonna come at it from the back side with a 13mm on a swivel to get that tensioner out. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to explain this to you, and I apologize for the poor camera angles and work, but I'm trying to get the job done and film at the same time, which takes more work. Okay, so we're looking under here where the intercooler would be, and right back up here, there's a hole. And it's about a 1-inch diameter hole. And there's a gap behind that hole. And that directly through the center line of that hole in this casting is where the 13mm nut bolt is. So we're gonna take my long extension on an impact with a swivel on the end, and stick it all the way up there through that hole, and we're gonna get that 13mm off. And I don't think I can do that with one hand, so I'm gonna set the phone down, sorry. Okay, back from a short break. I just had dinner. So there is the new tensioner pulley that's installed. Again, I put the 16mm socket on there, or box end wrench on there to turn it to get the Serpantine belt back on. Now, next I moved on to the new oil filter cooler housing. And there are 4 bolts that hold it on, which obviously remember from taking it off. Let's go over to the bench and I'll show you the order of how I tightened them. Sitting in the engine this way, there are 4 bolts. So I got all 4 of them started, kind of finger tight. And then as you tighten it, you're crushing this gasket. And so it tends to want to, it doesn't immediately go tight. So So I finger tightened all 4 of them, and then everything I did in a crosshatch pattern after that. So it was, you know, here to here to here to here. And I'd snug one up until it was tight, and I'd snug up the next one. Then you get back to the beginning, you notice that it's a little bit loose again because the other ones have compressed. And so you just keep going in a circle or in a cross pattern until everything's nice and snug. And then 11 foot-pounds is your torque setting, which is about 132 inch-pounds. So then again, tighten them all up to the 11 foot-pounds. And then in the same order, you're going to go 90 degrees further. So a quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and then you're done. And that sets the stretch on the bolt. So that's the process I went through. And the new oil filter cooler housing is installed. So after the 4 bolts, the mounting bolts were in and tight, this side hose right here was the next one that I adjusted and tightened the clamp and just made sure it was sitting the way that I wanted it. So that was my next step. By the way, this is what the tensioner looks like, and that is the mounting bolt in the very back of it. So it goes through the side of the engine like that, and then that 13 mil bolt attaches it from behind. And you know, mine was fine, but now's the time to replace it. Next, the 10 mil goes in to mount the dipstick, and the plastic clip, I don't know, whatever this is called, goes to attach it to the oil filter cooler houser way down in there. So the intercooler was next, and I went ahead and installed that, pretty much the reverse of the way that it went in. Couple things I learned along the way. One is, don't forget about this guy. Plugging him in last isn't a problem, but mine, gravity pulled him way down, and I had to kind of pull the intercooler back out to fish this wire up. Also, you're just gonna have to methodically go through all of the hoses. The big air hose that comes in here. You've got a hose on the side here that clamps on. When I was originally putting the intercooler in, I had this hose, which goes to the radiator, going around this side of the AC hose, but it doesn't go on the back. So that might be helpful for you to know. Once I push the intercooler up in place, I got this rubber neck to slide up on, and then I kind of just held it in place here, and then went below and continued to hold it up, and then got those 2 bolts, those two T30 Torxes that go into the side of the block. Get those 2 installed. So those go right here, and the other one is up here. And then you can just make sure all the hoses on the bottom to the coolant pump and to the radiator, and attach the hose clamp for this, and make sure those are all in place. And once these 2 guys are bolted in and probably snug but not overly tight, then you can go ahead and put in the 10 mil that is right down there. I don't think you can quite see it, but go back to the beginning of the video if you don't remember that bolt. Okay, that is the intercooler. I think I've got all of the pieces and parts in place and in tight. So next, the fans are going back in, and then the air intake tube and plenum. And then I'll be ready to fill it back up with fluids. All right, we just wrapped up that project, and it's back together. The oil's in, the coolant's in. Reassembly is pretty much just the reverse of the disassembly. So I showed you a little bit of that, but not much. Trying to keep the video from getting too long. But if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment or a question below, and do a favor for somebody else someday. Have a great day. Bye.